Now, the economic community of West African states faces growing threats of terrorism, climate change, military coups, and poverty. Jihadist violence has surged this year in Nigeria and the Sahel region, including Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Leaders and representatives from Ecowas are meeting in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. This meeting aims to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the regional body that was established on the 28th of May in 1975 rather, with 16 members. So this morning, we dissect the significance of Ecowas, and we're joined by Bukola Idowu, a journalist and executive director for Kimpact Development Initiative, and also Douglas Ogbankwa, a lawyer and policy analyst. They're both joining us from Nigeria. Bukola and Douglas, thank you so much for joining us. How are you guys this Friday?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Morning, Africa.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great. Thanks. Let me start with you, Bukola. 16 countries, which have now become 12, gathered to drive regional integration and free trade, free movement in the West African sub-region. How far have efforts come through the years in terms of advancements when it comes to ECOWAS?
I think the ECOWAS have come, they've done so well in some areas, and when you look at the past 50 years, there are significant achievements you can actually count and say, look, they have done in terms of, and just to name few, when you look at the regional integration in terms of the free movement, and achieving that is a great feat. Don't forget some other blocks across the world or continent have not been, even in Africa, have not been able to achieve that. And then you look at in terms of the effectiveness of the peacekeeping over the years they have been able to do. You recollect the issue of ECOMOG and the rest. Then the issue of the free trade and is also one of the key things they have done. Of course, they have their challenges, and like you rightly said in your introduction, 16 have become 12, and it's a major challenge, and there are issues they have to deal with. But as it is now, what some of the things they have been able to achieve within that 50 years has also been something that should be commended. Don't forget, ECOWAS in 50 years have also been able to establish ECOWAS courts. They also have the West Africa Health Organization and some other areas. Even the biometrics alone that allow for free movement of person, and you also are aware in terms of what they are doing when it comes to economic integration. They are already looking at, and which they have even started the West Africa gas pipeline, and so some of these things are there. However, have challenges of low trade among the countries and some other things. But if you ask me in terms of what they have been able to do, they have been able to achieve some of these, and I think these are some of the things they should build on, and also look at those challenges they have been facing over the years, or in the recent year rather.
Douglas, let me bring you in here. Bukola cites a few achievements in terms of, as the time we commemorate 50 years of ECOWAS. However, there have been challenges. He also speaks on that. The one I want to ask you on is the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They went on to form their own alliance of Sahel region states. How has this impacted the integrating body as far as credibility and progress in other parts of trade matters?
The withdrawal of those three countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, has been a big blow towards providing a common economic corridor for West African states. As you would recall, in 2001, January 2001, Mauritania withdrew from ECOWAS, and their major reason being that they don't want to be part of a common economic corridor. However, you realize that the withdrawal of those three countries are predicated on, ideological alliances with Russia as opposed to one or two other international powers. That has thrown a big blow on ECOWAS. You realize that ECOWAS is doing a lot of international, transnational highways, like you have the Abidjan-Lagos highway, and there's the Nouakchott-Bamako highway for now. So that would also affect the West African pipeline project that my friend has and brother has talked about now. And it would also affect the efficacy of the Common Economic Corridor. The ECOWAS attempt to have a common currency, which they intend to call the ECO, and in realization of that objective, they have the West African Monetary Institute, WAMI, which is in Accra, Ghana. That would affect, the ability to be able to have a common currency among African countries. And despite that, I think ECOWAS have really tried in ensuring economic integration, free movement of goods and persons. And you have like SADC, South African Development Commission. They have not been able to have such economic cooperation and economic integration where ECOWAS have.
Oh, let's talk about the e-passport. Bukola, let me come to you now. In terms of this, the common passport for ECOWAS citizens, as it speaks to borderless diplomacy, can we say that it is no longer a concept now, this term of borderless diplomacy, but a realization?
Yeah, it's no longer a concept. The realization that is there now is operational. Of course, for there are citizens, everybody. I mean, you carry ECOWAS passports and then you move within the region easily. And I remember the last time I traveled, and that's just recently. I traveled with the ECOWAS document, which I was able to move around, and that is, I mean, what. Mr. Douglas was saying, look, when it comes to that free movement and in terms of that passport, and that has been very effective. We have seen that. The only difference is that we don't know how effective the harmonization of the data is, or if this is already harmonized across all the country in terms of the data, in terms of the issue. But however, the document is there. You can travel with it within the ECOWAS region and without any hindrances, and which I think is a good thing, which they have been able to do.
If you've just joined us on Africa Rise and Shine, we are in conversation with Bukola Idowu, who is a journalist and executive director for Kimpact Development Initiative, and also Douglas Ogbankwa, a lawyer and policy analyst. They're talking about ECOWAS, that's the Economic Community of West African States, who are meeting in Lagos, in Nigeria's commercial capital, celebrating or commemorating 50 years of existence and looking into the achievements and some challenges and a way forward to dealing with those. Coming back to you, Douglas, in terms of your article, let's talk about the same issue of the e-passport feeding into the dreams of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. You've cited various or varying experiences at border posts on the African continent where you assessed racist and xenophobic incidences. Please elaborate on this and how these experiences may negatively interfere with this full realization of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Thank you very much. As you are aware, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, being a brainchild of the African Union, was signed by the 3 African countries to ensure seamless trade among them. However, it has been observed in breach because unlike the successes we have recorded in ECOWAS, the African Union has, like I stated in my article, been like a toothless bulldog. You would realize that if I need to go from here to South Africa by road, I would need nothing less than 23 or 24 passports. And that is something that we need to reason about. If you say you want free trade, then we have to have what I want to call borderless diplomacy. And the only way that can be achieved, African countries, of, restrict some kind of persons from coming into your country. However, when it comes to Africans who have legitimate business to do, you have no business applying for a visa. And I said that the concept of a visa is an imperial policy brought in by the imperialists to control Africans from even assessing themselves. Before the coming of the imperialists, Africans traded. You had people from the Bantu tribe and the Zulu tribe of South Africa trading all the way to Butu in Mali. People from the Swahili tribe in Kenya, Uganda, coming all the way through the Sahara to Tripoli, Niamey, and into Nigeria from the north, Kano. So the issue of visas, Africans should open their eyes. It's actually an imperialist tendency, because among the imperialists, they are visa-free. If you want to go from the Canada to the United States, if you're a Canadian, you don't need a visa. So why would I want to go and see my brother in South Africa, and you will say I want a visa? And about some African leaders have actually not helped in ensuring that there is some kind of integration among Africans. I gave you the examples of the Tunisian president who stated that whenever you see any black African in Tunisia, he should be killed. And I then, as the director of strategic communications of the African Bar Association, on behalf of the African Bar, issued a statement condemning the action of the president of Tunisia, which I think was not just xenophobic, was even genocidal. And the African Union did not even utter a word. So these are some of the issues we are talking about. We need to walk the talk with our so-called regional bodies, because some of them are actually just paperweights.
And different countries are guided by different laws. We've seen in certain areas where there's even acts of activism from neighboring countries into a certain country where leaders will say, please don't interfere with the way we do things over here. But as much as there are international standards that need to be adhered to, the role and influence of border police and how that can or their role needs to advance or progress to ensure that Ecowas countries are sort of speaking with one voice as far as that can happen. Douglas, how do we achieve that?
That's a very brilliant question. You see, security is an important element in international development, and integration comes with so attendant consequences. One of the negative outcomes of integration is that there could be inflow of transnational crimes. In this regard, it is important that ECOWAS does not just, as an institution, concentrate on economic integration, but also, in security integration. In this regard, it is important for ECOWAS to have a joint border patrol along their corridors, their border corridors, to ensure that we do not have people using integration as a license to bring about terrorism. The crisis in Libya, as you know, had created another issue with some terrorists from the Arab world infiltrating the various authorities, because Libya has various authorities that run Libya. And from there, they are able to launch various cells, terrorist cells, into different African countries. So it is important that the leaders of ECOWAS, and in this regard, even all African leaders, find a common ground in sharing intelligence. One of the reasons you see that the Western world are far and above we Africans is that they share intelligence. You will see an American intelligence agency calling a British intelligence agency, they call themselves cousins. But in Africa here, what we have is that our intelligence services, we operate at cross purposes. There seems to be this, pristine nature of us trying to think, we are trying to outdo each other. At the end of the day, we must realize that all Africans, and that the artificial border created is actually a creation of imperialists to make us seem as if we are divided. But in the real sense, we are one, as we hold our ancestry to one source.
Let me come to you, Bukola. When we talk of a single currency, the ECO, what would be needed to ensure its successful implementation, first of all, and then the continental and even global means of exchange are achieved?
So, I think number one thing we have to first of all look at, and I will take it as a foundational conversation from what he said, and that is the political will, even of the leaders themselves. They have to, because this has been a concept for a long time, and you keep wondering. Now, you have been able to achieve free movement within the sub-region, Ecowas sub-region, and you have been able to even achieve this issue of free trade. Then why are we having this delay when it comes to a single currency? And then so I think everybody must come together and have that political will to be able to execute this. Now, don't forget that this is not only an issue within the West Africa sub-region. So you are even talking about it. I mean, I'm very happy when you make reference to the entire African Union, where we are even having an issue when we, in terms of trade among ourselves. If what's that trade alone is not even an issue for me. I mean, sometimes ago, I went to Zimbabwe, and at some point I went to Kenya, and I have to first of all travel to Europe to come to Africa and then to come to Nigeria. You can imagine. So where they pick you from Kenya or Ethiopia, and some instances they take you to Qatar, and then before you come, and then it's very, very difficult. We have a lot of borders we are put in, I mean, as an impediment to our growth. Now, when you look at the statistics, and again, one of the things you need to look at is that what is the percentage of the trade among the West African Union? The data is still saying is less than 20% among ourselves. And so until we now begin, even most especially in the West African country. And I think one of the reasons that is causing this is that, look, how do we encourage trade among ourselves first? And if that percentage is increased, so for instance, when you have close to, if you begin to jack it up to like about 40% trade within the West African region, then I think the issue of the single currency will have much traction. But as it is, we need a political will. We need to increase trade among ourselves. And don't forget, so when Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, when they step out of this Sahel, this Ecowas, when they step out, one of the things they started talking about is imposing tariff, and that have not been there. And again, that tariff be very, very effective, because you also need to look at the volume of trade that goes into Burkina Faso or that goes into Mali within the West African region. And this is one area. So you need to look at, when you go to EU, for instance, the volume of trade within the EU community alone, in terms of power, in terms of gas, in terms of energy, is massive. In terms of tourism, is massive. So the euro currency become very, very effective. And then you come into the America, you look at the Canadian dollar, the American dollar, and because there has been a huge amount of trade. And that is why when President Trump was talking about is going to impose tariff, and then look, there is a reciprocal tariff also. I said we are going to also impose tariff because the volume of trade is high. Now, when the volume of trade is high, it will encourage it will be easy when it comes to the issue of single currency. Says that the leaders of ECOWAS have to first of all look at that political way to achieve this, and then we have to encourage trade among ourselves. We still have an African West African countries or African countries that decide they prefer to trade with Russia and then to trade with their neighbor next door.
And those imports, the tit-for-tat imposition of these duties imposed, it causes tension. So in the case of ECOWAS and the Sahel region states, or alliance of Sahel states, do you think those tensions caused because of those import duties imposed might subside, might be alleviated?
Well, I think partly, I mean, partly, that is one. But the most important thing again is that, see, when these people pull out of ECOWAS, and I think the foundational issue has been there. And one of the things which the ECOWAS should not have allowed to happen is that these people should not have been allowed to form an alliance and then begin to look into Russia or look into other country as probably either protector, either forming an alliance with them, either economic or security-wise, because that mediation should have been done to even avert that. The first response of ECOWAS to this was initially supposed to be military response to their brothers, and I think which was not the first thing to do. You see, the perception of the people also have an issue. The perception of the citizens.
Let me interject there, Bukola, because I just want to ask the final question to Douglas. The ECOWAS Court of Justice, how independent is it really, Douglas, in dealing with West African people's rights? And can we depend on it to continue in its plight?
The ECOWAS Court of Justice has actually done a whole lot in the defense of the people's rights of West Africans. However, the problem that we have is the enforcement of the judgments. You know that members of ECOWAS are signatories to the protocol establishing the ECOWAS Court of Justice. The justices of the court, which is located in Abuja, Nigeria, have, however, been very, very effective in ensuring that people's rights are defended as enshrined in the various constitutions of member countries and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which was signed by African countries. The problem we have, however, is that member states do not cooperate in the execution of the judgments. There are some cases where member states actually concede to settlement of the issues by either stopping the human rights abuses or ensuring that they compensate the victim.
In some aspects, it is something we can depend on to continue in the plight of West Africans. We don't have much time. We actually are completely out of time, and I'm sorry to interject on both between you guys. But gentlemen, thank you so much again for joining us on Africa Rise and Shine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Aluta continua, I guess, for ECOWAS as we celebrate or commemorate 50 years of the Economic Community of West African States. Completely out of time there, but we were joined by Bukola Idowu, who is a journalist and executive director at Kimpact Development Initiative, and Douglas Ogbankwa, a lawyer and policy analyst who's written on this issue. So maybe you can find that online.